With the NCAA dead period set to end in June, the Alabama Crimson Tide is currently in a phenomenal place with a lot of really highly touted recruits. And now that we know for certain that visits will be able to happen again, a lot of 5-star and very talented guys are announcing that they plan on taking visits to the Alabama Crimson Tide, and we have got to talk about it. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes and N for no. Do you believe that the Alabama Crimson Tide recruiting class is set for a major takeoff? And let me know what you're thinking. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification because I do constant college football content. And if you enjoy that content, be sure to like and comment down below because those interactions are really big for content creators like myself. But with all that being said and out the way, let's talk the Alabama Crimson Tide recruiting news and updates. And first and foremost, I want to start with offensive tackle Zack Rice. Now, this 5-star tackle out of Virginia is going to be a massive priority for the Crimson Tide. Standing 6'6", this guy has got a very, very, very high ceiling. This is someone who the Alabama Crimson Tide have really focused in on, and what the Crimson Tide have going for it is his high school coach actually knows Sal Sunseri. And furthermore, Rice has spoke at length and has spoke very highly of Doug Marrone. I think that that's going to be a very, very big one to watch. The Alabama Crimson Tide have really made up a lot of ground in his process, and they will be battling Notre Dame, Ohio State, North Carolina, and Virginia for his commitment. But like I said, given the Crimson Tide's history with the offensive line position, the fact that he's actually talked very highly about Doug Marrone, and Sal Sunseri has that relationship with the coach, I think the Alabama Crimson Tide have got to feel good here. The Crimson Tide are still going to be after guys such as Devin Campbell, but from everything I can get right now, Devin Campbell to Texas seems far more likely than Devin Campbell to Alabama, though it is a long time to go before pen is set to paper. But the Crimson Tide are surging for Zack Rice, 5-star tackle, and this would be a huge grab for the Alabama Crimson Tide. But that's not all. Elite wide receiver Brennan Thompson is also scheduled to take a visit to Alabama. Now, Brennan Thompson's visit is scheduled for November 6th when Alabama plays LSU. And this is a guy that the Crimson Tide would love to add into their class. This is a wide receiver that absolutely fits the mold of what Saban has been talking about in the offseason. Saban has been preaching speed, speed, speed kills at the wide receiver position. Now, you don't want to be making fast mistakes, but as long as you are incredibly fast and you can get down the technique, the playbook, you are incredibly dangerous. And this is a kid who has all the ability to be incredibly dangerous on the next level. He ran a 10.38 100-meter dash. He is blazing fast, and the Alabama Crimson Tide has to really like that they're able to get in an official visit, especially with the history the Alabama Crimson Tide has with the wide receiver position. Furthermore, the Alabama Crimson Tide has a 5-star quarterback in the class already, which we always know kind of can help round out your recruiting class because a lot of these guys are going to be much more inclined. A lot of these great wide receivers are going to be much more inclined if you have an elite level passer in class. Alabama currently has Bryce Young on campus, Jalen Milroe in the back burner, Paul Tyson, and Ty Simpson coming up. That is a stable of quarterbacks that they feel very confident in, and as such, wide receiver talent will continue funneling to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Kevin Coleman's a guy we need to watch out for. Evan Stewart's a guy we need to watch out for, but also Brennan Thompson out of Texas. This is someone who we need to keep a close eye on because he has elite speed. He is a guy who I think is actually a little bit underrated in the national rankings, but I think at the end of the day, when everything's all said and done, he's going to be someone that is impossible to ignore for colleges. He's going to be making splashes at the next level, wherever it is he goes. Jumping to the class of 2023, 5-star Samuel Pimba from IMG Academy talked about the Alabama Crimson Tide at IMG's spring practices, and he had some very interesting things to say. For instance, he said that the Alabama Crimson Tide is actually the entire reason he started playing football. Now, the 6'4" athlete currently takes reps at wide receiver and defense. The Crimson Tide reportedly like him on defense, but if he wants to play wide receiver, I don't think Alabama's going to shy away from that. It is important to note that he was wearing Alabama bracelets, and he is going to be coveted by every major institution in college football. It certainly will be a tough battle being able to get him on campus, but anytime you hear that a student athlete as talented as he says that they've always dreamed of playing for Alabama, that Alabama is the reason they started playing football in general, you have to really like how that goes for you, especially with the IMG to Alabama pipeline. A lot of talented guys have made that transition from IMG to Alabama. Evan Neal, Trey Sanders there right now. There's a long, healthy list. Ja'Cory Brooks. And not only is Samuel looking to add to that list, but he has a guard on his team that is a 4-star that is also incredibly interested in the Alabama Crimson Tide and said that they are a school he has always dreamed of playing for. If we jump back down to the class of 2022, rising defensive tackle Aaron Bryant is also closing in on a visit to the Alabama Crimson Tide. He's talked about really wanting to do that. It'll be closer to National Signing Day, but at the end of the day, the Alabama Crimson Tide is very happy to be getting the attention that they're getting from Bryant. He's surging in the recruiting rankings. The Tide likes him, and they already have a defensive tackle from Mississippi, but being able to capitalize on that state would be big. In other recruiting news, and in probably the most exciting recruiting news I have in this video, 2 5-star cornerbacks have officially talked about taking visits to the Alabama Crimson Tide. First and foremost, the number 2 corner in the nation, the number 4 player in the nation, Domani Jackson, who is currently committed to USC, has officially announced that he will be taking an official visit to the Alabama Crimson Tide. This is very good news for the Crimson Tide. We talked about in a video not too long ago that the Crimson Tide was going to be working diligently to attempt to flip Jackson from USC to Alabama, and this is only going to be able to help that cause. And look, right now it is important to note, like I said, he is committed to the University of Southern California. USC is recruiting very highly right now, but anytime Saban can get in a cornerback's ear, we know how that can go. So I am very excited that the Alabama Crimson Tide are going to be getting a visit from Domani Jackson. I think that that's big news, but it doesn't end there as far as 5-star cornerbacks are concerned, because 5-star Denver Harris has announced that he is officially going to be taking a visit to the University of Alabama. Now, he is going to be taking a official visit to all 4 institutions within his top 4, but Alabama looks to be trying to get the last visit amongst that 4. Jay Valai being a guy who is working on getting Denver Harris a part of the Crimson Tide staff, but it's also very important to note that Nick Saban has been personally involved in this process, and Nick Saban is very involved with the Denver Harris process. It's going to be very interesting to watch Denver Harris. He's a quiet kid, a very talented kid, and someone who, on this channel, I've talked about a lot, being very, very hopeful that the Alabama Crimson Tide can sign him. And look, as far as everything I'm hearing, the Crimson Tide are in a phenomenal position to land Denver Harris, and so the fact that they can get Domani Jackson to take an official visit, even though he's committed to USC, the fact that they can get Denver Harris to take an official visit, I think that this 22 class for the University of Alabama is just waiting to explode. Remember, we talked about after A-Day that the Crimson Tide have some guys who are interested in them, such as 5-star Mykel Williams, who have not yet camped at Alabama, and because of that, the Alabama Crimson Tide are not surging on them because they have not camped there yet. With camps opening back up at the University of Alabama, this class is set for a major rise because it is very, very good right now. If you look at the average recruiting rank, the Alabama Crimson Tide ranks inside the top 5 of any recruiting class in the nation. The only reason the Crimson Tide is not currently within the top 10 is because they do not have as many recruits in this class, so it's a little misleading, but that's exactly why, y'all, I keep thinking that this class is in a perfect position to rise because they don't have a lot of guys. They are doing very well with a lot of 5-star guys, a lot of highly rated 4-star guys, and now with visits opening back up, they're going to be able to get guys into camp, and guys are going to be able to get on campus, which I think bodes very well for the Alabama Crimson Tide. But I cannot wait to hear what y'all are thinking. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes and N for no. Do you believe that the Alabama Crimson Tide class is set for a major push, just like they did last year? And let me know what you're thinking, and who would you like to see a part of this Alabama Crimson Tide class that we talked about today? That's it. See ya.